in the last few cycles, most of DeFi has revolved around Ethereum, EVM chains, BTCFi and BTC as an asset class within DeFi hasn't really been existed. I guess that really changed over the last 6 to 9 months. And we probably were one of the largest beneficiaries of something like that. How we think that's going to go forward is that increasingly across DeFi, it's going to be, for lack of a better word, a more balanced world, right? Where you see the largest token in this entire asset class start to gain its prominence, start to gain its usage within protocols, within chains.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic from 4RC. Today's show spotlights SolvBTC. In this episode, we learn about this new decentralized Bitcoin reserve that's grown to $1.3 billion in deposited Bitcoin, and how Bitcoin holders can unlock their liquidity and gain access to a wide array of DeFi apps with SolvBTC. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge Podcast possible. Discover MERLIN Chain, the cutting-edge Bitcoin Layer 2, trusted with over $2 billion in total value locked. MERLIN revolutionizes Bitcoin by unlocking its true potential with native L1 assets, lightning-fast transactions, and ultra-low fees on an EVM-compatible network. Elevate your Bitcoin experience with MERLIN Chain today at merlinchain.io. Power up your portfolio by borrowing, lending, and multiplying your favorite assets, made safe and easy by the industry-leading automation tools at SUMMER.FI. SUMMER.FI offers a curated DeFi experience to access the highest quality protocols and strategies. Discover new earn strategies for your portfolio in a user-friendly app designed to filter based on the tokens you hold, the networks you transact on, the protocols you trust, and the highest available yields. Learn more today at SUMMER.FI, the best place to borrow and earn in DeFi. Tired of hopping between tabs, searching for new tokens before the hype catches on? Try MATCHA.XYZ, the DEX aggregator from 0x. Matcha connects hundreds of DEXs so you can trade millions of tokens and find fresh new drops. Matcha works out the best route to save you money on every trade. Swaps are free, and Matcha has everything you need to trade on-chain. Gasless swaps, limit orders, and cross-chain, all in one place. Search Trade Done at matcha.xyz. Catch the tide of the mainnet launch of Puffer Finance. Whether you're an Ethereum staker or an aspiring node operator, Puffer delivers the decentralization revolution with its cutting-edge technology. Start with just 2 ETH to unlock the potential of native liquid restaking and maximize your earnings. Join the movement now and anchor your stake at puffer.fi. All right, let's introduce Jing, the co-founder of Solv Protocol. Jing, welcome to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me today.
So excited to talk to you about the growth of SolvBTC. So I think of SolvBTC as almost like a pseudo Bitcoin reserve. Put simply, I can mint SolvBTC on multiple networks, including Ethereum, Arbitrum, BNB Chain, MERLIN. And the idea is that you can hold that now and earn passive yield with SolvBTC. So you're really helping to solve for unlocking all of the liquidity that is in Bitcoin and giving us access to the wide range of DeFi applications out there. And so hopefully this will be a nice overview for folks about how that all works and what you need to know to get started with Solv. So Jing, why don't we start with a little more about your background, though, and the founding of Solv? So whatever you can share, we'd love to learn more.
Sure. So I guess my background, and prior to coming in crypto, I was working largely in traditional finance. I was on the trading floor doing mainly structured products and exotic options, something I was doing for close to a decade. And then sometime in 21 and probably late 22, stumbled across crypto, stumbled across DeFi, really got excited about this, and then started digging, and then this is where we are right now.
Hey, Jing, maybe give us your high-level overview of what Solv is and kind of like what problems you're aiming to solve, to use that word again.
I think in a single one-liner sentence, what we are looking to build and what solution we're really looking to propose is it's a compliant and transparent solution for Bitcoin reserves, right? I think in crypto, especially in Bitcoin and BTC, it's probably the single largest and the single most important token, if you want to call that, right, in this entire industry. There's a lot of fragmentation that we notice. There are different types, firstly, of wrapped BTCs existing on chain. You have your WBTCs on Ethereum and on Arbitrum. You have your Binance BTCs on BNB chain. You have your Avalanche BTCs, and then you have a whole host of other stuff. And then you also have BTCs on BTC Bitcoin L1, right? And then more importantly and increasingly, you start to see Bitcoin in the hands of your traditional institutions, whether is it in their cold wallets or increasingly what we see this year in ETFs, right? So a lot of these types of various Bitcoins are out there, very, very fragmented. How do you actually bring all of them into the entire ecosystem? That's number one. And then number two is, for such an important asset class, there really isn't any yield, returns, or anything you can use Bitcoin for many of the past few years. And I think it's something we're hoping to remedy, something we're hoping to fix, given how we are seeing developments in infrastructure over the current cycle, actually.
Jing, can you talk more about like the grand vision of this protocol? I'm actually thinking we could start with like, who are you building that SolvBTC for? You know, we've had a huge year here with the approval of a Bitcoin ETF in the United States, and that's obviously been a major milestone for the crypto industry. Just means a lot of money can flow into Bitcoin, but those ETFs don't serve everyone in the world, and obviously that's the point of DeFi, is I think this like permissionless access for anyone, you know, who's willing to connect their wallet, and that larger addressable market, in my opinion, you know, is knocking at the door there with something like a SolvBTC.
So firstly, that's a very big question, and I guess it's probably going to be a lot of points to cover. But so the first way we think about it is, like we mentioned about earlier, how it's actually a Bitcoin reserve where it's going to incorporate multiple types of Bitcoin. But then more importantly, it's about, for this, what 1 trillion in assets, right? What can you actually do with it within crypto, within DeFi? How do you actually generate returns? How do you make it safe? I think from our perspective, who are we really building this for? It started out as we building a solution for ourselves, because as users in DeFi and as users in multiple wrap versions of BTC, we actually went through and experienced a lot of the pain points. It came to us that a lot of this doesn't really make sense. How can we actually, since no one is really building a solution around this, we should be the ones actually working around it. And that's how we really came about trying to do this and hopefully much more, right?
Jing, the phrase decentralized Bitcoin reserve, I think sounds really cool, but I would love if you can break that down for our listeners. What do you actually mean by that? Like, what does that vision look like?
I think it's also a bit ironic on how we are calling it. Like, definitely we want to call it Bitcoin reserves, but what really is it about, right? It's about how you can have consensus, how you can, number one, use whichever version of Bitcoin they're using, obviously with the assumption that it's trusted, it's safe, it's well built, right? How you can actually use it within the broader ecosystem. Take an example. If you're holding a wrapped Bitcoin on BNB chain, how do you actually take part in something happening on Arbitrum, on Ethereum mainnet, right? So these are problems that were never really solved, and this is what SolvBTC is really looking to do, right? To create a single, almost composable solution where you can integrate it across chains, across protocols, so that users don't really have to deal with that problem. And also from a partnership and a protocol perspective, you don't have to integrate 5, 10, 20 different wrapped Bitcoin versions, right? You just pick one. And then that's so much better in terms of scaling. It's so much better in terms of the problem of fragmentation.
Jing, my understanding is that with SolvBTC today, you have to opt for one of the yield strategies on the Solv app. So if you go to app.solv.finance, you'll see this under the SolvBTC tab. However, can you talk about like what does the future state of SolvBTC look like? Like, when the product is like fully ramped up? Like, in other words, like, is there like a passive yield that we could earn just holding it? And if that's the case, like, what will be the underlying yield for that passive Solv BTC?
So I think it's a good problem, and it's a good question that you actually raised it. It's something we have been actively thinking about. So with Solv BTC, what it solves is a lot of the problems with fragmentation. How do you bring more people, more users and incremental users to the ecosystem? But then on the other side, what you have as a problem are returns and yield. How do you actually generate a lot of these things? And one thing that we notice coming into the Bitcoin ecosystem, and especially more over the last 6 to 9 months, is that there's very little consensus on what is considered safe, what is considered default. I think in the Ethereum world and in EVM world, Ethereum staking is probably considered the one risk-free strategy or the one risk-free asset, right? In Bitcoin world, that doesn't really exist right now. There could be options like staking on various chains. There could be various types of restaking options. There could be more stuff like strategy-based, like basis trading kind of stuff, like what Athena does, right? So there are a lot of these things out there. Who am I to tell users that this should be the safest option for you? I think a lot of these things will be time-tested, battle-tested, and once we have a greater consensus, we would like that to be the default or the native yield for many of the assets that we offer.
Jing, so you mentioned some different yield strategies, kind of like, I'd say more almost native yield strategies within Solv BTC, but curious if you can maybe shout out some popular DeFi strategies and integrations where you're seeing nice yields involving Solv BTC right now.
So I think it's a good point. So one of our focuses right now is on an up-and-coming integration and protocol called Babylon. So we're spending quite a bit of time over the last few weeks and last few months actually getting the relevant infrastructures and set up in place. Babylon in a one-liner is really just a Bitcoin staking protocol, right? It's something that we think is pretty cool on what they're building, especially something very new in this cycle. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on this. The returns are potentially going to be very interesting. I think a similar comparable would probably be more like the EigenLayer, or maybe even a Symbiotic on the EVM side. So this is something we're definitely looking forward to. So that's probably the one thing I would probably look to highlight right now. The second thing that we really like, if your risk appetite is a little bit more, it's going down the route on basis trading, on strategy kind of exposures, right? So we did a partnership with Athena recently that I think we are quite excited about. I think both them and us, we are quite keen on growing this. Is that for Bitcoin users, to a large extent, they don't really want to dilute their exposure to this asset, right? They want to hold this asset and they want to hold it to infinite, right? What we are giving them is an opportunity to, number one, maintain their Bitcoin exposure, while at the same time getting returns on Athena's USD, and on top of that, Athena sets as well, right? So I think this is probably a very nice and a very good combination for users to actually maintain their exposure, but to juice up their returns, almost like a yield enhancement kind of idea.
Jing, we recently did a podcast with Zuki from the Ignition team behind FBTC, which is like a new one-to-one pegged version of tokenized Bitcoin, if folks haven't listened to the episode. Just wondering, like, how are you partnering with them? Like, it sounds like FBTC is looking to replace something like wrapped Bitcoin, and it seems like there's like a clear synergy between Solv and FBTC.
So I think the team at FBTC, we have known them for quite a long time. We are huge fans of what they're building. I think to a certain extent, almost similar to us, they're really trying to disrupt a lot of what's happening as this defaults on chain, right? Together with FBTC, we are partnering with them on a number of chains, on Ethereum, on Mantle, working with them to grow their footprint within the ecosystem, grow their footprint within the entire DeFi, and I think it's something we are extremely excited about.
Before we get back to the show, just a quick thanks to our sponsor at Mantle Network, the layer 2 that pioneered the 5th largest LST with 1.6 billion TVL called MATCHA. Since July 1st, Mantle is running a 100-day airdrop campaign called Metamorphosis, to distribute a new governance token for the Mantle liquid staking protocol called Cook. The community can earn points for Cook, called Powder, by holding METH in Metamorphosis and simultaneously enjoying other yield and reward opportunities in the Mantle ecosystem. Users can also earn Powder by staking MNT in the Mantle Rewards Station. For more details, go to the Mantle blog at mantle.xyz/blog and follow the 0xmantle handle on Twitter for more updates.
Jing, I want to just step back to a little bit more about the infrastructure side. I don't want to get too in the weeds. I want to keep it somewhat high level, but maybe give listeners just an idea of how some of this operates under the hood with SolvBTC, if you can.
I think the way we think about this is obviously on the top layer, what we want to build is a Bitcoin reserve. But on the underlying, like the infrastructure, the validators required to build and support this entire thing is something we have been spending quite a bit of time actually refining and building. We obviously didn't expect this cycle to take off as quickly as it is, and we definitely had less time to refine it, but I'm definitely very happy on where we are right now. So the way we really think about this as follows, right? Like on the bottom layer, the infrastructures we have and the validators we will be having are used to support a bunch of things. Firstly, asset exchange, right? You have bidirectional exchanges for SolvBTCs between the various rep assets, SolvBTC, native Bitcoin, SolvBTC, and your various types of Bitcoins out there. That's number one. Then number two, it's cross-chain transfers with SolvBTC and the various LS teams. Why I would highlight here is because we have noticed that there have been, over the years, problems with DeFi protocols, whether they get hacked, their routes and stuff like that happen. How can we build protections in place into the entire system? From a bridging mechanics, from a redemption mechanics, how do you actually make it in place that potentially validators, users can vote on transactions, whether they should potentially be rejected? Like stuff like that, right? How do you build this whole consensus mechanism to ensure things stay a lot safer? And then on top of that, we talked about the various yield options, the various yield strategies, right? How can you give users exposures to this? And down the road, where we are looking to optimize a lot of these things, would users be able to participate in what goes as the default? Would the voting be able to handle all these things, right? So that's how we really think about it, right? On the top layer, what we're looking to build, and on the bottom layer, all the infrastructure that we're looking to use to support it.
So as of this recording, there's around $1.3 billion of Bitcoin in SolvBTC. Can you recount, like, since the start of the year, like what has factored into that growth rate? I mean, what has led to all of this like early traction? I'm curious because it's really a rocket ship to watch. Like I feel like we spoke a few months ago and you were at like 500 million in TVL. So it's not a reflection of just like crypto prices going up. It's actually the inflow of like new net Bitcoin being deposited, which is a huge marker for success here.
So I think it's a combination of a few things, right? I think it's about, number one, building a product that has a relatively good product market fit, right? Something that probably people started to realize that it's needed. But at the same time, it's also about timing. And why I would say that is, where we decided to launch and where we decided to grow, we started on some of the Bitcoin L2s, right? Specifically on MERLIN chain. And what that gave us the opportunity is actually to gain exposure to, in my view, an incremental user base to DeFi. Traditionally, it's always been a zero-sum game, right? Where one chain gains TVL, it goes to another chain losing TVL. But users from this base are, in my view, net incremental to the entire ecosystem. They didn't really come through your traditional EVM ranks. They could have came through your ordinals, your runes, your BRCs. They could have came through your centralized exchanges, right? So not just user growth, but asset growth into the entire ecosystem is increasing because of this. And this is what really gets us excited, right? Like, we are building something not just for ourselves. We are building something that it's, in my view, a net benefit to the entire ecosystem. So that's probably one of the main reasons that helped it. And then the second thing is what we realize is the access of BTC or the access of Bitcoin into the DeFi ecosystem. We had to go along chains that provide good, for lack of better word, bridging access to DeFi. So that's one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time on BNB chain, right? Because it's close links with the various exchanges. So this was how we really look to grow and how we strategize. And obviously, also on the back of that, spending time, getting a footprint, getting access, bringing users from outside the ecosystem in, whether we talk about more institutional users and users along those kind of things.
Jing, you mentioned institutional funds coming into the space earlier, and just kind of curious, like, what is your strategy for bringing these types of actors into the space?
I think if we put ourselves in their shoes, what do they value and what do they want? I think there are a few things, right? They want safety, and that's really of paramount importance, right? Working with partners that they can trust, working with underlying infrastructure that they can trust, whether is it the tech, whether is it the custody solutions, whether is it the transparency. I think from a lot of their perspectives, it's all about. It's even less about the returns and the yield, right? It's about going into something that's new. How can they trust it? How can they get comfortable, right? And I think a lot of it is, like I said, right, is working with trusted partners, transparency, safe solutions, trusted custody solutions. I think these are things that we try, and I think we have been pretty successful in delivering and building out over the last few years. And I think that definitely helps us in our outreach with many of this more or this less crypto native, more institutional kind of players.
Jing, I think I saw this term, I don't know where it was. It might have been in your docs, but BTCFi. I'm curious, like, what that term means to you, and like why is this an important term, I guess, maybe for the future of Bitcoin and or DeFi?
I guess as the term suggests, BTCFi is really how you play DeFi around Bitcoin, right? In the last few cycles, most of DeFi has revolved around ETHEREUM, EVM chains, BTCFi and BTC as an asset class within DeFi hasn't really been existed. I guess that really changed over the last 6 to 9 months, and we probably were one of the largest beneficiaries of something like that. How we think that's going to go forward is that increasingly across DeFi, it's going to be, for lack of better word, a more balanced world, right? Where you see the largest token in this entire asset class start to gain its prominence, start to gain its usage within protocols, within chains, and more importantly, get it accepted by its various wrapped versions, or hopefully we'll see via SolvBTC down the road, right? And that's how we really see this thing going. But more importantly than that, it is a net gain and a net increment to this entire ecosystem, right? We are not fighting a zero-sum game anymore. It's about incremental new users, incremental assets, incremental TVL really coming into this ecosystem. And how this is going to evolve will really depend on the users that will be using this. It's probably going to not too different from how it already is, but there will definitely be some quirks. There will definitely be some, what's the word I'm looking for? There'll be essentially, it will evolve around the users that are coming in, the new users that are coming in, what they like to do, what they like to play, what do they like to, or which chains they like to. And I think a lot of it will be molded around the characteristics of these users.
Jing, I think this is a great place for us to start to wrap up. So I want to remind our listeners they can learn more about Solv Protocol by going to solv.finance. They can follow Solv Protocol on Twitter. They should follow JX_Solv. We'll put that onto our show notes so you can easily reference it. That said, Jing, thank you so much for coming on with us. Again, it's impressive to see just how much growth you've had since the start of the year. Solv really is solving a pain point that Nomadic and I feel as users who want to be able to leverage more of our Bitcoin liquidity in DeFi applications. So maybe you can just close us out with what are next steps for Solv?
I think there are a few things that we're definitely looking at. So obviously, a large part of our focus over the next few months is going to revolve around Babylon and the success of staking Bitcoin and the LSTs that we're going to be building on that. So I think that's number one, something that we're very, very excited about. Number two, it's about building integrations into new protocols, new chains, whether is it with our underlying SolvBTC assets or whether it's with the LSTs. I think these are things that we really want to see it work. We really want to see it grow. At the end of the day, that's what we are really here to do. And I guess number three, it's about how we can attract incremental and new users, right? Whether, like we mentioned earlier, it's the more institutional players, or whether is it via, for example, maybe users that are in ETFs, right? How do you actually get them involved in this ecosystem? I think these are things that we are constantly thinking about, we're constantly working on, and hopefully we'll have a viable solution for everyone to see in the next few months.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And for future episodes of the Edge podcast, please check out our link tree at edge_pod.